You didn't wake up this morning planning to waste money. But somewhere between unlocking your phone and closing that last browser tab, you probably did. Not because you're careless, not because you're bad with money, and not because you suddenly forgot how numbers work. You did it because the system is very good at nudging you to say yes when you meant maybe, and maybe when you meant no. Here's the uncomfortable part. Most unnecessary purchases don't feel unnecessary when they happen. They feel reasonable, justified, even smart. And that's the problem. Because the most effective financial traps don't look like traps. They look like choices. And right now, those choices are everywhere. This matters more today than it did 10 years ago, and a lot more than it did 20. Not because people suddenly became worse with money, but because the environment changed. Spending used to require friction. You had to go somewhere, hold something, hand over cash, feel the moment. Now, spending happens silently, instantly, often invisibly. A thumbprint, a tap, a saved card, number you don't remember entering. And that shift rewired how we buy things. To understand why unnecessary purchases feel so hard to avoid, we need to stop blaming individual self-control and look at the psychology underneath, the incentives, the math, the design choices quietly working against you. This isn't about budgeting tips or willpower hacks. It's about how modern spending systems are engineered to bypass your rational brain, and why that works so reliably. Let's start with something simple. When you buy something you don't need, there's usually a story attached. Not a lie, a story. This will save me time. This will last longer. I deserve this. This is basically an investment. These stories feel personal, emotional, unique. They're not. They're templates. Your brain is a prediction machine. It evolved to make fast decisions with incomplete information. That worked well when choices were limited and consequences were immediate. Eat the berries, or don't, run, or freeze. Trade with this person, or avoid them. But modern consumer decisions are abstract, delayed, and flooded with information designed to steer, not inform. So your brain uses shortcuts. Psychologists call them heuristics. Most people call them instincts. One of the strongest is loss aversion. You don't want to miss out. Not because the thing is amazing, but because missing it feels bad. That limited time offer doesn't excite you because of the discount. It pressures you because of the clock. The countdown triggers a subtle panic. Decide now or lose something forever, even when you didn't want it 5 minutes ago. Then there's anchoring. You see a product listed at $300, crossed out, now $149. Your brain doesn't ask, is this worth $149? It asks, is $149 better than $300? That first number becomes a reference point, even if it was meaningless to begin with. Retailers know this. So do subscription services. So do apps. Ever notice how pricing tiers are arranged? Basic, Pro, Premium. The middle option often exists to make the expensive one feel reasonable, and the cheapest one feel insufficient. You're not choosing freely. You're being guided, and that guidance doesn't stop at pricing. It extends to identity. Modern marketing rarely sells products. It sells versions of you. The productive you, the organized you, the stylish you, the healthy you. You're not buying noise-canceling headphones. You're buying focus, calm, control. You're not buying a fitness tracker. You're buying discipline. A future self who wakes up early and follows through. The purchase becomes symbolic, a promise. And promises are emotionally powerful. Here's where it gets dangerous. The emotional reward often happens at the moment of purchase, not the moment of use. That's dopamine. Anticipation, not ownership, drives a chemical spike. Your brain gets excited about the possibility of becoming someone new. But once the item arrives, reality shows up. The headphones are just headphones. The tracker sits in a drawer. The productivity app sends notifications you start ignoring. The promise fades, but the charge stays. And that gap between anticipation and reality is where unnecessary purchases multiply because the solution feels obvious. Maybe you just haven't found the right version yet. So you try again, Now zoom out. Individually, these purchases feel small, forgettable, almost harmless. But systems don't care about feelings. They care about totals. Let's talk about the math nobody likes to do. Take a conservative example. An extra $40 a week on things you didn't plan to buy. Not outrageous. One impulse purchase. A delivery fee. A minor upgrade. That's $160 a month. $1,920 a year. Over 10 years, that's $19,200. Not including interest. Not including opportunity cost. Not including the fact that spending tends to increase with income. And this is an extreme spender. This is normal behavior in a high frictionless environment. Now factor in subscriptions, streaming services, cloud storage, apps you meant to cancel, free trials that weren't free. Most people underestimate how much they spend on subscriptions by 50% or more because recurring charges are quiet. They don't feel like spending. They feel like background noise, which is exactly the point. Companies love predictable revenue, so they design systems where forgetting is profitable. Cancellation flows buried 3 screens deep. Confirmation emails framed like breakups. Are you sure? You lose access to, again, not accidental. Now layer social pressure on top. We live inside comparison engines. You don't just see products anymore. You see people using them, enjoying them, succeeding because of them. Social media collapses distance between aspiration and action. You see someone with a better setup, a nicer trip, a cleaner house, and your brain fills in the gap. They have this because they made better choices. This is normal. I'm falling behind. Spending becomes a way to keep pace, not with neighbors, with curated highlights. And here's the irony. The same platforms that trigger the insecurity often sell you the solution. The ad appears right after the envy. Smooth, efficient, profitable. So who benefits from all this? Not you. The modern consumer economy runs on volume, not satisfaction. If everyone only bought what they needed, growth would stall. Share prices would wobble. Quarterly expectations would miss. So the system optimizes for frequency. More purchases. More often. With less thought. That's why everything is personalized. Why friction is removed. Why spending is gamified. Cashback points. Streaks. Badges. You're rewarded for behavior, not outcomes. And there's a deeper mechanism at play. Credit. When spending is decoupled from pain, it increases. Paying with cash activates the insula, the part of the brain associated with discomfort. Swiping a card reduces that signal. Tapping a phone reduces it further. By now, pay later removes it almost entirely. The cost is delayed. Abstract. Future use problem. So present use says yes. Again and again until the bill arrives. Then something interesting happens. People don't usually react by spending less. They react by justifying more. I already messed up. I'll fix it next month. This one thing won't matter. That's sunk cost fallacy. Once money is gone, you treat future decisions differently, even though the past is irrelevant. So unnecessary purchases aren't isolated mistakes. They're part of a feedback loop. Emotion triggers spending. Spending triggers justification. Justification lowers resistance next time, and the system quietly hums along. But let's address the counterargument. Some people say this is all just personal responsibility, that nobody forces you to buy anything. Technically true, psychologically incomplete, because choice architecture matters. If you put candy at eye level, people buy more candy. If you remove defaults, behavior changes. If you add friction, spending drops. These effects are consistent, predictable, measurable, which means unnecessary purchases aren't random failures. They're the expected outcome of a well-tuned environment. And that environment is accelerating. AI-driven recommendations, dynamic pricing, real-time behavioral testing. Your feed is constantly learning what makes you hesitate and what makes you click, not to help you, to convert you. So it's a long-term risk? It's not just financial. It's cognitive. When spending becomes a default response to discomfort, boredom, or insecurity, you lose something subtle but important: intentionality. You stop asking, "Do I need this?" and start asking, "Why not?" Over time, that shifts how you relate to money itself. Money becomes a tool for emotional regulation, not resource allocation. And that's unstable, because emotions are volatile, and money is finite. Zoom out even further. On a societal level, unnecessary consumption drives debt, environmental strain, and economic fragility. Growth becomes dependent on dissatisfaction. Stability depends on people feeling perpetually one step behind, which raises a quiet, unsettling question. What happens when people finally slow down, when they stop upgrading, stop chasing, stop filling every gap of the purchase? Some systems can't survive that, so the pressure increases. More urgency, more personalization, more psychological leverage. And here's where things get interesting. Despite all this, unnecessary purchases don't actually make people happier. The data is clear. The pleasure spike is short-lived. The regret lingers longer, yet the behavior persists. Not because people are irrational, but because the system rewards repetition, not reflection. So where does that leave you? Not with a checklist, not with a rule, just with awareness. Because once you see the pattern, it's hard to unsee. The next time you feel that pull, that sudden, almost reasonable urge, you might pause, not to judge yourself, not to resist heroically, but to notice: is this about the thing or the story attached to it? Is this solving a problem or soothing a feeling? And maybe the most uncomfortable question of all: if this purchase disappears from your life tomorrow, what actually changes? Because unnecessary purchases rarely ruin lives overnight. They do something quieter. They slowly trade future flexibility for present relief. And the system is betting you won't notice until much later. The question is, now that you're aware of how the game works, do you still want to play it the same way?